have probably seen Sinners, which is an incredible movie on its own, and we can probably also understand that music and song plays a huge symbolic role, which isn't rare for African American media. Even the literature, like jazz by Toni Morrison, music, song, rhythm plays a huge symbolic role. And today I want to dive into some of the roots of that significance, dating back to slave narratives like Frederick Douglass, which I have in front of me. Now, I'm going to read to you a couple passages from this narrative, and then we're going to explore how that's significant in the movie Sinners. So it shouldn't take me too long, so just bear with me, be patient, okay? So Frederick Douglass is recounting his experience listening to slaves singing songs. I have sometimes thought that the mere hearing of those songs would do more to impress some minds with the horrible character of slavery than the reading of whole volumes of philosophy on the subject could do. I did not, when a slave, understand the deep meaning of those rude and apparently incoherent songs. I was myself within a circle, so that I neither saw nor heard as those without might see and hear. They told a tale of woe, which was then altogether beyond my feeble comprehension. They were loud tones, loud, long, and deep. They breathed the prayer and complaint of souls boiling over with the bitterest anguish. Every tone was a testimony against slavery, and a prayer to God for deliverance from chains. The hearing of those wild notes always depressed my spirit and filled me with ineffable sadness. I have frequently found myself in tears while hearing them. The mere recurrence to those songs, even now, afflicts me, and while I am writing these lines, an expression of feeling has already found its way down my cheek. To those songs, I trace my first glimmering conception of the dehumanizing character of slavery. Now, coming from Frederick Douglass, who himself was a slave, the fact that song and the songs that slaves would sing helps him recall the truest dehumanizing characteristics of slavery. I feel like really captures its significance in the slave's experience and also the culture of slaves. But let's get into Sinners and why that's significant. So clearly we see how song plays a role in this movie. And I want to bring your attention back to a specific scene where Delta Slim, Sammy, and Stack are in the car. And this is right after they pick him up. And Delta Slim is talking about how he performed for white patrons with the bandmates, showing how even after slavery, African Americans were working to use this what was once a form of protest and an expression of anguish to gain and earn their freedom in this new society. But even so, he was paid well by these white patrons. Before he was able to enjoy the money, his bandmate was killed by the KKK, highlighting and contrasting how money and their music could earn them freedom, but they were constantly faced with the harsh and oppressive reality of their circumstances, which we see also mirrored at the very end as Stack and Smoke are trying to use money and use music to create this community of freedom, which is then curbed by supernatural evils, and at the same time being conspired against by the KKK. Now back to the car ride. After Delta Slim tells his story, we see him almost cry, and as he's having this moment of despair almost, they pass a string of sharecroppers on the side of the road, and they're engaged in song. So before we see Delta Slim, which to the viewer, you might assume he's about to cry, he starts to hum, and then he starts to tap his foot. And then he, Sammy, and Stack all eventually engage in song. So in this moment where we could probably understand that Delta Slim is having an array of unpleasant, hurtful, angry feelings, he funnels all of those sensations into song, which relates to how Frederick Douglass receives in his experience of the singing of slaves, how they also funneled all of this hurt, all of this anguish, all of this rage, all of this helplessness into their songs. Now, song, as it relates to religion, also is highlighted in the movie Sinners, as we see Sammy having a conflict with his father and him saying, you have to give up music in order to join the church. Now, religion in Frederick Douglass's narrative is also incredibly significant in how Christianity and the Bible were used to justify slavery. And Sammy using song to protest the church is objectively significant. Sammy refuses to conform to this religious system that was once and still is used to oppress his race. And so he decides to leave this church and go and pursue a career in music, which in and of itself is significant. And he, at the very end, is shown on the stage performing his songs, probably a career that Delta Slim himself wishes he was able to have. And I feel like being able to see Sammy at the end on stage performing live is in some ways is significant, at least to me and how I interpret it, as a Black man reclaiming song as something that doesn't indicate his enslavement, but rather his freedom. Because as we at the beginning, we see the sharecroppers singing, and at the very end, we see Sammy on stage singing his own songs. So I love song and its symbolic significance in African American literature, and also how I saw it in Sinners. And I hope you might have learned something new from this. Happy Black History Month, and I hope you have a good day.